Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Pastor Carlos Malley. I'm the outreach pastor of the Circle Church of Alexandria, located in Alexandria, Louisiana, here for another episode of Manhood Monday. I wanted to talk on the topic today of yielding. Pastor Smith spoke about this yesterday as he preached through Matthew's Gospel, chapter 3, verse 13 to 17. However, I'm going to come from a different text, and it comes from Genesis, chapter 50, and I'm going to be reading verses 19 through 21. And it says, and this is the New King James Version, Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is today, to save many people alive. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So just to give you a little backdrop of this story, Joseph's father, Israel or Jacob, has just died, and he has just essentially said his last words to each of his children before he passed away. And after he passes away, now Jacob and his brothers come together, and they are going to bury their father along with his ancestors, essentially. So his brothers, if you remember the story, threw him out of jealousy into Egyptian slavery. And Joseph ends up in Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife lies on him. He ends up in prison. He goes to prison, and he runs into the cupbearer and cake maker. And the cupbearer, after having his dream interpreted, he forgets Joseph, leaves him incarcerated for a few more years. And then one day when the Pharaoh needs his dream interpreted, the cupbearer remembers Joseph and summons him to Pharaoh's palace, and he essentially reveals Pharaoh's dreams to him, and he becomes the second in command in Egypt. And so later on, his brothers are in that famine that hits Egypt for those first few years in that famine, and they end up having to come to Egypt in order to get grain to bring back to Canaan. And Joseph recognizes them, but they don't recognize Joseph. And Joseph at that point initially had a spirit of anger and unforgiveness in his heart, and he wanted to punish his brothers. But long story short, he comes to a place of forgiveness in his heart, and when he has an opportunity to lash back at them, he chooses not to. And so when his brothers see that their father has died, they think that Joseph is going to get revenge on them, and he's going to punish them. And then hence we read in verses 19 through 21 that he decides not to do that. He said, "I am in the place of God, which you had essentially planned evil for me. God used that for good, in essence, so that many lives will be saved." And so, and hence he saves, the nation of Israel, and he saves all of Egypt through his wisdom and through just his knowledge and understanding that God had given him. And so I wanted to share that with you because there are many times when each of us, as Pastor spoke about yesterday, want to yield to our flesh. And maybe there's someone out there who has hurt you and who has done you wrong, and you want to lash back at them. But maybe God is, through me, reminding you to yield to the fruit of the Spirit, where it will be in your best interest to forgive that person, not for them, but for you. Maybe it's time to yield, whether that's anxiety, anger, whatever it is that you're dealing with this morning. Maybe it's time to yield that thing. Like Joseph had this struggle in his heart, and he knew if you remember the story, as his brothers, particularly Judah, who he ends up saving, and Judah would be in the lineage of Jesus Christ, he shares the story of how his brothers had thrown Joseph in slavery, and that the only son that Israel or Jacob had left with the love of his life, Rachel, was Benjamin. And the thing that Joseph wanted was to see his full brother Benjamin, but in order to do that, he had come up with a way to kind of trap his brothers and make sure that they were caught up so Benjamin would have to stay. Well, when Judah tells Joseph the story and how that would break his father's heart, and there would be nothing that they would do to be able to redeem that, that's when Joseph breaks down. And he says, in his mind, I can no longer do this. So he reveals himself to his brothers. They weep, they comfort one another. And again, he ends up saving everyone's life. And so he yielded his anger. He yielded his frustration. He yielded his unforgiveness to God. And God ministered and comforted him. And as a result of that, he was able to bless his family and bless his, the nation of Egypt and nation of Israel. And he was able to save a lot of people's life and save his own life, for that matter, his heart and his conscience. And so I encourage you today to yield to whatever is a stronghold in your life. And we all have them. Yield that to the Holy Spirit. Yield that to the cross today. And so that whatever it is that God has for you, you can fully live that out in your life. You can fully walk into your calling, into your purpose, into your destiny. Because you have no idea the people that are waiting for your testimony in your life and your call. Because it may very well be the very thing that saves their life. And so I wanted to encourage you with that today, men, that, yield whatever that is going on in your life and just watch what God begins to do for you and your family. I always want to close by saying, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in and have a blessed week until we meet again. Take care.